The rain fell in a heavy, rhythmic chorus, drumming softly against the cracked concrete as the world seemed to hold its breath. In that quiet moment, under the dim glow of a flickering street lamp, a figure moved with hesitant grace, barely more than a whisper in the dark. Her dress, simple yet elegant, clung to her like a secret, and her eyes shimmered with a fragile mix of hope and despair. As she stepped forward, the air grew thick with anticipation, every heartbeat pounding louder than the rain, the faint echo of a love long lost, yet hauntingly present. It was as if time itself paused to witness this fragile soul, standing on the edge of a memory she couldn't see but felt deep within her bones. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint perfume she wore, a subtle reminder of what once was, and perhaps what could never be again. Her silhouette, delicate and unassuming, carried the weight of unspoken stories, of dreams buried beneath layers of humility and heartbreak. The silence was profound, broken only by the distant hum of the city, unaware of the silent storm brewing in this small, rain-soaked corner. In that stillness, a single tear slipped silently down her cheek, catching the fleeting light as it traced a fragile path. The world around her seemed to fade away, leaving only the raw ache of memory and the whisper of hope. And then, amidst the shadows, a man watched, his heart pounding with a mixture of disbelief and longing, as if he had stumbled into a dream he couldn't quite wake from. His eyes, dark and intense, fixed on her with a gaze that held centuries of unspoken words. He saw beyond the humble dress, beyond the rain-streaked face. He saw a reflection of someone he had loved and lost, a mirror of what once was, and what might still be. In that fleeting moment, the rain softened, the night grew quieter, and the universe seemed to hold its breath once more. The scene was set, not just for a simple meeting, but for the collision of past and present, heartbreak and hope intertwining like the rain itself, relentless, cleansing, and full of unspoken promises. As she hesitated, the world around her faded into a blur of memories and dreams. The gentle hum of her heartbeat was the only sound, steady, unwavering, a testament to resilience. And in the distance, the faint glow of a hope rekindled flickered, inviting them both to step forward into an uncertain tomorrow, where love could perhaps bloom again from the ashes of yesterday. He stood alone in the dim glow of his modest apartment, the silence pressing heavily on his chest like a weight he could never quite shake. The world outside moved on, bustling and indifferent, but inside him, a storm raged, quiet, relentless, unyielding. His hands trembled slightly as he traced the outline of a faded photograph, his fingertips trembling over the image of her smile. She had been gone for years now, yet her presence haunted every corner of his mind, like a ghost that refused to fade into the shadows. The ache of her absence seeped into his bones, a cold memory that refused to thaw, no matter how many days passed. He could still feel the hollow ache in his chest on quiet nights, when the world was hushed and he was left alone with his grief. The loss had carved deep scars into his soul, leaving him vulnerable and fragile beneath his polished exterior. He often wondered if he'd ever truly heal, if the ache would ever dull into mere memory. Loneliness had become his silent companion, wrapping around him like a shroud. His days were filled with routine, a sterile dance of work and solitude, each moment a reminder that something vital had been ripped away. He longed for connection, yet every attempt to reach out was met with a hollow ache, a reminder of the love he had lost and the cold reality of his loneliness. Sometimes he felt as if he was drifting in an endless sea of grief, waves crashing over him, pulling him further from the shore of happiness. His heart was a fragile vessel, battered and battered again by the storms of life. Illness had added another layer of vulnerability, an invisible sickness that sapped his strength and tested his resilience. It left him feeling exposed, as if his body was betraying him just as his spirit often felt betrayed by memories he couldn't escape. Every cough, every ache was a reminder of mortality, of how fleeting and fragile life truly was. Yet beneath this veneer of weakness was a soul desperately clinging to hope, hope that someday, somehow, the ache would soften into acceptance, that he might find peace in the quiet after the storm. He often wondered if anyone truly saw the pain beneath his composed exterior, if anyone understood the depths of his loneliness. The ache of longing, the weight of grief, the shadow of a love lost, all of it lingered in his eyes, a silent testament to a life forever changed. And yet, amid the darkness, a faint flicker of hope persisted, like a fragile ember waiting to ignite. He looked out the window, watching the rain trace lines down the glass, each droplet a whisper of memories long past. His heart beat unevenly, a slow, aching rhythm, a reminder that he was still alive, still yearning. As the night deepened, he closed his eyes, letting the tears he'd fought to hold back slip free, silent and unbidden. In that quiet surrender, he found a strange comfort, an acknowledgment of his vulnerability, a reminder that even in pain, there was a kind of beauty, a quiet strength waiting to be rediscovered. Perhaps, someday, amidst the rain and shadows, something new might bloom, something tender and real, born from the depths of his fragile heart. The sky was still streaked with streaks of gray when she arrived, a quiet figure carrying a small bag that seemed to echo her unassuming presence. She moved with a hesitant grace, her steps unsure as she approached the modest house at the end of the street. Her face was partially hidden beneath a worn scarf, yet her eyes, deep, searching, caught his attention immediately. There was something familiar in her gaze, a softness that felt like a whisper from the past, yet it was layered with shadows of her own struggles. She hesitated for a moment before gently knocking on his door, as if unsure whether she should disturb the quiet he had so carefully built around himself. He opened the door slowly, surprised by the sight of her standing there, almost like a ghost from a dream he couldn't fully remember. Her lips parted slightly in a shy smile, tentative and unpolished, but genuine. She had the kind of face that told stories, imperfections etched into every line, a hint of tiredness in her eyes, yet something undeniably real about her presence. She fumbled with her words, offering a simple apology for the unexpected visit, her voice barely above a whisper. The air between them felt thick with unspoken truths, like the gentle pause before a storm, yet neither of them rushed to fill it. He found himself caught in the quiet vulnerability of her gesture, an act as small as a knock yet as profound as a shared secret. She looked up at him, perhaps sensing the loneliness that shadowed his features, or maybe simply seeing someone who needed a moment of kindness in a world that often overlooked the quiet struggles of ordinary lives. She didn't seem to expect anything in return, and that honesty struck a chord deep within him. Without a word, he stepped aside, inviting her in with a gentle nod. She entered hesitantly, her hands nervously clutching the strap of her bag. She was never perfect. Her clothes were simple and slightly wrinkled, her hair a bit tousled from the damp breeze, but in that imperfect moment, she carried a quiet dignity. She looked around the small, cluttered space and offered a tentative smile, as if recognizing a shared loneliness in the humble surroundings. As she settled on a worn chair, she reached into her bag and produced a small, folded cloth, perhaps a homemade gift or a gesture of gratitude. Her fingers trembled ever so slightly as she handed it to him, a simple act that felt like a fragile bridge connecting two worlds. Her eyes flicked downward, shy but earnest, and her voice broke softly. "I saw you from across the street. I thought you might need this." The gesture, humble as it was, lingered in the quiet air, a gentle reminder that kindness often arrived in small, unassuming forms. There was no grand speech, no miraculous salvation, just a moment of shared humanity. She was flawed and perfect, and carrying her own burdens, yet in that fleeting exchange, she offered a piece of herself, unguarded and real. And as he looked at her, the rain still softly falling outside, he felt a flicker of something fragile awakening, an ember of hope, perhaps, that amidst the shadows of grief and loneliness, kindness could still bloom quietly, like a delicate flower pushing through cracks in the concrete. In that moment, he realized that sometimes, the smallest acts can gently open the door to something new, something worth waiting for. In the days that followed, their interactions unfolded like quiet whispers of a shared secret, small, unassuming acts that began to unravel the solitude he had carried for so long. She would often arrive at his doorstep with a warm loaf of bread or a handful of freshly picked herbs, her hands trembling slightly but her eyes steady with genuine care. There was no grand gesture, no sweeping promises, just simple offerings that felt like fragile threads weaving a fragile tapestry of trust. One afternoon, she brought over a worn but cozy blanket, folding it carefully as if it were a precious relic. She placed it over his shoulders while he sat on his porch, watching the rain-dappled streets stretch out before him. "It's cold today," she murmured softly, her voice blending with the gentle patter of rain. Her act, so small yet so meaningful, made his chest tighten with a strange warmth, a reminder that even the smallest kindness could break the icy walls around his heart. Later, she insisted on walking with him through the neighborhood, her footsteps tentative but steady beside his. They moved in silence at first, the kind of silence that's comfortable because it's shared, no need for words to fill the space. Occasionally, she pointed out the blooming wildflowers growing stubbornly between cracks in the pavement, or the way the sun peeked through the trees, casting dappled shadows on their path. She never asked for much, but her presence seemed to ask for nothing in return, simply existing beside him like a gentle reminder that he was not entirely alone. When the rain started again, soft and persistent, she hurried to open her umbrella, holding it high above them so they could walk together without getting soaked. Her gesture was unspoken but deeply understood, a quiet act of companionship that dissolved the barriers of loneliness he'd built around himself. One evening, as the sky darkened and the wind carried a chill, she offered him shelter. Her small house, humble and unpretentious, became a sanctuary, not because it was grand, but because she opened her door without hesitation. She brewed tea in a battered kettle, the aroma filling the cramped space, and they sipped in silence, the warmth from the cup seeping into their hands. He watched her, noticing how her fingers trembled slightly when she handed him the mug, a sign of her own quiet vulnerability. "You don't have to face everything alone," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. That simple sentence, layered with unspoken understanding, chipped away at the walls he had carefully erected over the years. Over time, these small gestures, sharing meals, walking in the rain, offering shelter, holding an umbrella, became the language of their connection. Each act was unpretentious, rooted in a mutual recognition of pain and hope. They were fragile moments, like delicate petals trembling on the edge of bloom, yet they carried an undeniable weight. And with every passing day, he felt the icy isolation inside him loosen just a little more, replaced by the quiet warmth of her kindness, the kind that doesn't demand recognition but quietly transforms. But beneath these gentle exchanges, an undercurrent of tension was beginning to ripple. The outside world, unseen, relentless, started to press in. Rumors, whispers, the weight of expectations, those shadows stretched longer, threatening to engulf the fragile peace they had cultivated. The small kindnesses, so powerful in their simplicity, now seemed like fragile shields against an approaching storm. Still, as they watched the rain shimmer on the windows, he wondered if these acts of quiet compassion could withstand the coming tempest. Perhaps, in the end, it was not just the small gestures that mattered, but the hope they kindled, like a faint glow in the dark, urging him to hold on, to believe that even amidst chaos, tenderness could bloom anew, quietly and fiercely, like a lone flower pushing through cracks in the concrete. The morning sun cast long shadows over the quiet street, but beneath that calm, a storm was quietly brewing. News traveled fast in a small community, especially when it touched the delicate threads of a fragile connection. It started as whispers, murmurs that twisted through alleyways and coffee shops, gossip about the woman who had come into his life, a humble girl with eyes that seemed to carry the weight of the world. The whispers soon grew louder, sharper, until they became a chorus that echoed with judgment and suspicion. Her resemblance to someone long gone, his late girlfriend, became a symbol, twisted into a story that painted her as an outsider, an intruder in the life he was supposed to rebuild. One day, the quiet dignity of their small world shattered. The local community, led by the influential voices of the town's elders and the strict voice of his own family, began to cast doubt. His father, a man of old traditions and rigid expectations, called him into the grand estate with a stern look that seemed carved from stone. "This girl," his father's voice was cold and measured, "is not fit for our name. She's too humble, too different. You're better than that." The words cut deep, like a blade threading through the fragile fabric of their quiet bond. His father's rejection wasn't just about her, it was about what she represented, a rupture, a betrayal of the image he was expected to uphold. But it wasn't only family that turned against them. The gossiping neighbors, hungry for scandal, began to whisper behind closed doors. The town's gossip mills churned out stories, how she was unworthy, how their connection was nothing but a fleeting illusion, a reckless mistake. The rumors painted her as a thief of his reputation, a symbol of everything that his social standing was supposed to avoid. The community's judgment fell like a cold rain, soaking into every corner of their newfound happiness, threatening to drown it in doubt. As the media caught wind of the story, perhaps through a careless comment or a passing glance, reporters arrived, eager to capture the spectacle. Cameras flashed, questions were hurled like stones, and the once private moments they shared now played out on the public stage. Every glance, every smile, was scrutinized under the unforgiving spotlight. The outside world saw only what they wanted to see, an outsider disrupting the status quo, a threat to the carefully constructed image of wealth and tradition. The delicate, slow-building trust they had cultivated was now strained to breaking point, tested by the relentless tide of external judgment. He felt the walls closing in, a suffocating weight pressing down on his chest. Fear gnawed at his resolve, fear that this external storm would destroy everything they had built, fear that even her quiet acts of kindness would be dismissed as foolish rebellion. The doubt seeped into his mind, whispering that perhaps he had been naive to believe in love's quiet resilience, that the world might never accept her, or even him, for who they truly were. Yet amid the noise and chaos, she remained by his side. Her eyes, gentle and unwavering, caught his in the midst of the storm. When the world hurled insults and accusations, she simply reached out, her hand steady, her voice soft but firm, offering comfort without words. She didn't try to fight the storm that raged around them. Instead, she became his anchor, quietly reaffirming what mattered most. Her presence, an act of quiet rebellion against the judgment, was a testament to her loyalty. She was unshaken by the external chaos, her resolve rooted in the unspoken promise that their bond was worth fighting for, a bond built not on appearances or societal approval but on the truth of their hearts. In the distance, the sky darkened further, clouds rolling in like the shadows of doubt and fear. Yet as he looked at her, he remembered that storms, no matter how fierce, eventually pass. And even in the midst of chaos, love, no matter how fragile, could find ways to endure, to hold on, and to bloom again, like a lone flower pushing stubbornly through a cracked sidewalk. The question was no longer whether the outside world would accept them, but whether they would have the strength to stand tall amid the storm and keep believing in the quiet power of their connection. Despite the relentless storm of gossip, judgment, and external pressure, she remained quietly steadfast by his side, her presence a gentle yet unyielding anchor. She didn't speak loudly or make grand gestures. Instead, she simply stayed close, her eyes steady and compassionate, offering a silent reassurance that words could never quite convey. When he found himself awake in the dead of night, haunted by doubts and fears, she would sit beside him in the dim glow of a single lamp, listening patiently as he poured out his worries, about his family, the community, the future they dared to imagine together. Her silence was a balm, a reminder that he was not alone in this, that someone believed in their fragile love enough to simply be present. During the days when the outside world pressed in harder, she often chose to walk alongside him at a distance from the prying eyes of neighbors and reporters. Her steps were slow, deliberate, as if to remind him that even amid chaos, life continued, steady and unhurried. She would glance at him occasionally, her gaze soft but unwavering, silently affirming her commitment. When he hesitated, caught between his desire to shield her and his need to stand firm, she would gently touch his arm or offer a small, reassuring smile. It was never about heroics or grand promises. It was about the quiet strength of her loyalty, in the way she simply refused to retreat. Her presence was like a steady heartbeat, constant, rhythmic, and it grounded him when the world felt unsteady. In moments of solitude, he watched her from a distance, often lost in thought. She didn't seek recognition or validation. Her loyalty was a quiet act rooted in understanding and compassion. She knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but her unwavering support made him feel less like he was fighting alone. Without words, she communicated her belief in their bond, by staying, listening, and simply being there. Her loyalty was human, imperfect, yet powerful, like the gentle tide that erodes the hardest stone over time. Slowly, her quiet strength seeped into his own resolve. He realized that her steadfastness wasn't a show of defiance or heroism, but a reflection of genuine care. It was in the way she looked at him when he thought no one was watching, a gaze that held no judgment, only unwavering trust. Her presence made him feel more human, more real, and it slowly chipped away at the doubts that had begun to gnaw at his confidence. She was not trying to change the world with grand words or gestures. She was simply there, constant, patient, and true. As the days stretched into weeks, her unwavering loyalty became a quiet fire within him. It nurtured his courage, igniting a small but vital spark of hope. Her steadfastness was like a lighthouse in fog, not blazing brightly but steady enough to guide him through the darkness. In her quiet support, he saw the true meaning of loyalty, not in dramatic acts, but in the gentle, persistent presence that refuses to waver, no matter how fierce the storm. And so, beneath a sky heavy with clouds and unspoken fears, he found himself taking small steps, moments of conviction rooted in her quiet strength. Her loyalty became a mirror, reflecting back to him the resilience he never knew he possessed. The storm around them raged on, but within that chaos, a new resolve blossomed, born from the simple, human act of standing firm together, in silence and in hope. As he looked out into the uncertain future, he knew that with her unwavering support, he could weather anything, like a fragile flower pushing through cracks in concrete, reaching toward the light with quiet, persistent grace. In the quiet hours of dawn, when the world still held its breath, he found himself standing at the edge of a small garden, the air thick with the scent of blooming flowers and the promise of new beginnings. The days of shadows and doubts had not vanished entirely, but slowly, a faint light began to seep into his heart, a gentle awakening from a long, restless sleep. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to breathe deeply, not out of obligation or habit, but with a renewed sense of purpose. The woman who had come into his life, with her humble grace and unwavering loyalty, had become the quiet catalyst for his internal transformation. She had shown him that worth was not dictated by wealth, status, or the approval of others, but by the quiet strength of one's own spirit. As he watched her move through everyday moments, tending to the garden, helping her neighbors, sharing a simple meal, he saw a reflection of a different kind of beauty, resilience, kindness, and an unshakable belief in the goodness of life. Their connection, once fragile and threatened by external storms, had begun to root itself deeper within him, nurturing a new sense of purpose. He started to see himself not just as a man defined by his possessions or his past love, but as someone capable of creating, teaching, and inspiring. He found joy in small acts, writing a letter to a friend, planting seeds of hope in others' hearts, sharing stories of perseverance that echoed his own struggles. Slowly, he began to smile more often, not just as a fleeting expression, but as a genuine reflection of gratitude for the second chance he was seizing. Dreams, once buried beneath layers of grief and shame, began to surface again. He envisioned a future where his words and actions could uplift others, where he could be a source of light in a world that often seemed shrouded in darkness. The woman's presence had ignited in him a quiet fire, a recognition that his worth was rooted inside, not in the fleeting approval of society. Her loyalty, her humble strength, had shown him that even the smallest acts could hold profound significance. As he took tentative steps toward this newfound purpose, he felt a gentle stirring within, an awakening of hope, a reminder that life, despite its scars, could still bloom anew. In the mirror of her unwavering support, he saw the reflection of a man ready to embrace his own resilience. His past grief and doubts no longer held him captive, but instead became the soil from which his inner strength would grow. Each day, he learned to listen more deeply, to forgive himself for the wounds he thought would never heal, and to see beauty in the ordinary. This internal shift was subtle but profound, a quiet revolution that whispered of renewal. With every act of kindness, with every word of encouragement he shared, he was weaving a new tapestry of purpose, one that honored both his past and the hope of a brighter future. And as the sky brightened with the promise of dawn, he understood that his worth was no longer defined by what was lost but by what he chose to create from the remnants. His journey was no longer about rescue or redemption alone. It was about becoming someone who could stand tall in the face of adversity, who could inspire others to find their own light amid the shadows. A new chapter was unfolding, delicate yet resilient, like the first bloom after a long winter. And with a heart slowly mended and dreams reignited, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever awaited, knowing that his true worth was already within him, waiting patiently to be revealed. The world outside was waiting too, eager to see the man who had rediscovered his purpose, a testament to the quiet power of inner strength and the hope that blooms in the most humble of hearts. The town square was alive with anticipation, a gentle hum of voices rising and falling like a familiar song. It was the day of the festival, a celebration that had once been a simple gathering but now felt charged with unspoken hopes and cautious optimism. Every eye was fixed on the small stage at the center, where he stood, trembling slightly, clutching the microphone with trembling hands. The weight of months, years, of judgment, doubt, and internal struggle pressed down on him, but he took a deep breath and looked out at the crowd. His gaze settled on her, standing just behind him, her eyes steady, her presence a quiet testament to resilience. As the sun cast a warm golden glow over the gathering, he felt the pulse of his own heartbeat echoing the rhythm of the moment. His voice, steady now, broke the silence. "I used to think my worth was measured by the opinions of others, by the wealth I inherited or the reputation I kept. But today, I realize that true strength comes from within. It's the courage to stand here, vulnerable and real, despite the fears that have haunted me." He paused, feeling the sting of emotion in his throat, then continued. "For too long, I let the fear of rejection silence my voice. I was afraid that loving someone different, someone humble, would make me lose my place in this community. But I see now that love isn't about fitting into someone else's mold. It's about being brave enough to show the world who you truly are." The crowd hushed, some exchanging hesitant glances, others listening intently. He took a step forward, eyes brimming with a mixture of vulnerability and resolve. "She is not here to be a spectacle or a symbol of rebellion. She's here because she's become a part of my life, my heart, and I want everyone to see what I see in her: kindness, strength, and the courage to be herself." A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd, but he pressed on, voice growing stronger. "Today, I stand before you not to seek approval, but to declare that love is worth fighting for, especially when it asks us to look beyond appearances, beyond societal expectations. If this journey has taught me anything, it's that true worth lies in the courage to be authentic, to accept others as they are, and to embrace change." As he finished, he took her hand and gently lifted it, a silent gesture of trust and hope. For a moment there was silence, no whispers, no judgment, only the collective breath of a community witnessing a man shedding his fears, choosing vulnerability over silence. Then, slowly, applause began to ripple outward, soft at first, then swelling into a chorus of acceptance. Faces that once held skepticism softened, some eyes glistened with tears of understanding. The community, with all its flaws and prejudices, was witnessing a transformation, a quiet revolution of hearts willing to open, to forgive, to accept. She stepped closer, her smile gentle but fierce with quiet strength, and together they faced the crowd, symbols of resilience and hope. This moment was not just about their love, it was a reflection of courage, an invitation for everyone to look inward and find the bravery to break free from their own fears and prejudices. The festival's music played softly in the background, a gentle reminder that life, like love, requires patience and persistence. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the square, he realized that this was only the beginning. The community's acceptance was a gift, but the real victory was within: the courage to be authentic, to love without shame, and to believe that change is possible, one quiet step at a time. And so, beneath the open sky, in the heart of the town that had watched him grow, he took a final deep breath. his voice, steady and clear, carried into the evening air. "Let us remember that every story worth telling begins with a single act of bravery. Today, I promise to keep walking that path, with her, with all of you, and with the hope that love and acceptance can bloom even in the most unexpected places." The crowd responded with a warm, collective embrace, a chorus of hearts opening to the truth that sometimes the greatest victories are born from the courage to stand tall and be seen. The gathering in the family estate's grand hall was quiet, heavy with unspoken words and lingering doubts. The once rigid patriarch, her father, sat hunched in his chair, his face a mask of conflicted emotion. Years of pride, tradition, and misguided judgments weighed on him, but today, as he watched her standing beside him, humble, resilient, and radiating quiet strength, something within him began to shift. The room was filled with a tense silence, broken only by the faint rustling of silk and the soft glow of candlelight flickering across aged wood and ornate tapestries. He looked at her gentle eyes that held no shame, only a quiet determination. The woman he had once dismissed, doubted, and scorned, was now standing before him, not as an outsider or a threat to their family's reputation, but as someone who had shown more courage and integrity than he could have ever expected. The words he had kept bottled up for so long threatened to spill over, but he hesitated, unsure where to start. Finally, his voice, rough and hesitant, broke the silence. "I was wrong," he said softly, almost as if afraid to disturb the fragile peace. "For too long, I let my pride and my fears blind me. I judged her without truly seeing her, without understanding her. I thought that love was about appearances and status, but I see now that it's about the strength to accept someone for who they truly are." His eyes, clouded with regret, met hers, and she nodded gently, offering him a fragile but genuine smile. He took a long breath, the weight of his past mistakes pressing heavily on his chest. "I should have seen her worth beyond her humble beginnings, beyond the judgments of others. I should have listened to my heart instead of listening to the voices of my ancestors or the expectations imposed on us. I was blinded by my own prejudice, and for that I am truly sorry." Tears welled in his eyes as the realization washed over him, the regret of years lost to arrogance, the pain of misjudging her, and the hope that redemption was still within reach. She stepped closer, her voice soft but unwavering as she responded, "Your forgiveness means everything to me. I never wanted to be a symbol of conflict, only a testament to love's resilience. Today, I see that even the hardest hearts can find room for understanding, if only they open themselves to it." Her words, humble yet powerful, bridged the gap that years of misunderstanding had created. The patriarch reached out, trembling, and gently took her hand. His grip was tentative at first, but then grew firmer, a silent promise of remorse and acceptance. Tears slipped silently down his cheeks as he whispered, "I was wrong about everything. I see now that love isn't about who has more, who is more powerful, or who fits a mold. It's about kindness, courage, and the willingness to forgive oneself and others. I am grateful to have finally seen the truth, and I promise to do better, starting today." In that moment, the room was filled with a quiet, sacred grace. The walls, once echoing with judgment, now resonated with forgiveness. The family's wounds, long buried beneath layers of pride, began to heal, thread by thread. Her father's apology was not rushed nor hollow. It was a testament to genuine change, a slow, unfolding realization that love and humility could rewrite their story. As the candle flames flickered softly, casting a warm glow over their faces, she felt a gentle, almost poetic sense of renewal. The past no longer held them hostage. Instead, they stood at the cusp of something new, a future forged not by superficial appearances, but by the unbreakable bonds of understanding and acceptance. And in that quiet, sacred moment, the family's legacy was reshaped, not by status or pride, but by the quiet strength of forgiveness. The stars outside shimmered softly, whispering promises that love, once lost, could always find its way back, if only hearts were brave enough to open. The journey of redemption had begun, and with it, a new chapter of hope and unity. As the first light of dawn stretched across the horizon, The sky painted itself in hues of soft pink and gentle gold, a quiet reminder that each day begins anew, carrying with it the promise of hope and renewal. The village beneath shimmered in the early morning glow, a world awakening to the subtle beauty of possibility. The stars, once brilliant in the night's velvet sky, now faded into the pale blush of sunrise, whispering silent blessings to those who had dared to believe in love's resilience. In the gentle hush of the morning, the couple stood together at the edge of the village square, their figures silhouetted against the awakening sky. The air was filled with a profound sense of calm, as if even nature itself paused to witness the quiet triumph of acceptance and courage. She looked at him with eyes that reflected a deep, unspoken understanding, the kind that only true connection can forge, beyond words and appearances. He, in turn, held her hand with a tenderness born from years of doubt and longing, now replaced with the quiet strength of genuine love. There was no need for grand declarations, no dramatic words to seal their future. Their story was written in the soft glow of the sunrise, in the silent promise of a new beginning. The world around them, with all its imperfections and prejudices, had begun to understand that love was never about perfection or appearances. It was about the quiet, unwavering truth that no one is truly alone when they choose to stand up and be seen, when they choose to love despite the odds. As the gentle breeze stirred the leaves and carried the faint scent of blooming flowers, it became clear that this moment was a testament, not just to their journey, but to the universal truth that love, at its core, is a shared human experience. It is a reminder that beneath the surface, everyone is fighting a battle, longing for acceptance, and searching for a place to call home in someone's heart. Love does not come as a magical salvation, but as proof that no one has to walk their path alone, that even in the quietest moments, there is a flicker of hope waiting to be kindled. And so, with the rising sun casting a golden glow across the land, the scene softly faded into a tableau of serenity and unity. The world was waking, and with it, the understanding that love's true power lies in its ability to heal, to forgive, and to remind us all that we are never truly apart. That, in the end, we are all part of something greater, a vast, interconnected tapestry woven with stories of vulnerability, courage, and unwavering hope. If this story has touched your heart, remember that love's beauty is in its honesty and its persistence. It's in the small acts of kindness, the quiet moments of acceptance, and the courage to be oneself. Share this story, like it if it resonated with you, and subscribe for more journeys of hope and human connection. Because in a world that often feels divided, love reminds us that we are never truly alone. Each of us carries a light that can brighten the darkest nights, guiding others toward understanding and compassion. As the last hues of dawn fade into the soft embrace of morning, let us carry this message forward, that love, in all its quiet strength, is the most poetic act of all. And in sharing our stories, our hopes, and our hearts, we keep that light alive, for ourselves, for others, and for the world we are shaping together.